Hey, good morning and welcome to Office Etiquette. My name's Charlie Taylor. I'm one of your presenters for today. I'm a CE consultant here at KDLA.
And I'm Valerie Edgeworth. I am your other presenter for today. Charlie and I are tag teaming this presentation, and I'm also a CE consultant here at KDLA.
And a little bit of technical information before we get started. If you have any chat questions, we do anticipate this to be a very interactive webinar. We like to hear from you, hear your ideas, so be ready to chat. So if you have questions, please feel free to chat those in as we go along. The chat pod will always be in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you have any technical issues as well with the slides, sound, anything like that, please chat those in as well, and one of us will help you out with that. At the end of the webinar, as I said earlier, you'll be able to download a copy of these slides that you can save and refer to back later. And for those of you attending the webinar live, you will receive a certificate of attendance in an email that should come within about a week. And I think that's about it. Just want to remind you that this webinar is being recorded. It will be posted on our archived webinars page within just a couple of days. Okay, with all that being said, looks like our poll is telling us that we have some people comfortable and some people not super comfortable. So that's great. That's what we're here to do, is talk about office etiquette and hopefully learn enough to get us all to be experts. So we're going to go ahead and move into our slides.
This presentation is pretty large in size, so it might take a little bit, there may be a little bit of a lag as we go through the slides here.
Okay, so we're going to start by looking at the meaning of etiquette. So what is etiquette? It's, you kind of think, isn't it basically just the same thing as having good manners? Why do I have to have a webinar on having good manners? Well, it's a little bit different from that. Manners are sort of generalized guidelines for ways to behave in society. So it's things like you don't stare at people, you treat the elderly with respect. It's basically things that we learn from our parents or our elders at a young age, and watching from how they act. But etiquette's a little bit different. It's a specific learned code for particular situations. So this is things like, which fork do I use when I eat my salad? Or how would you address the Queen of England if you were to meet her? Something like that. So it's different because it's a set of rules that has to be learned. So why is this important? So both of these can seem, I know some people have negative feelings when it comes to manners and etiquette. They're outdated or they're a pain unnecessary, but they really exist for good reasons, which, to help you maintain your own personal dignity, and you'll see more of this about why this is true as we get into the presentation, and to help you also be honest and tactful to others at the same time. And most importantly, is to show respect and empathy for others. Etiquette will help you to do that in any kind of situation. So office etiquette is rules for behavior that are appropriate for your workplace. So it's sort of an extension of everyday etiquette, social etiquette. So why do we need to learn this, right? We're professionals. We work in libraries. We already know how to be successful at work. But you also need to know how to properly address someone that you don't know, or what to wear to an important meeting, things like that. So these are just something on like another layer on the cake that's going to, make you a little bit better in your workplace, kind of help you stand out from the crowd, in a crowd of people who may not know, what etiquette is or what proper etiquette is in a specific situation. So I like to kind of think of it as an addition to your career tool belt, so it shows, an additional initiative. So if it's so important, etiquette in general is so important, why does it seem like it's gone? Why does it seem like nobody uses it on a regular basis? Well, that is a great question, and we didn't really know why. We didn't know a true answer. We're librarians. So we, of course, researched and looked at a lot of experts, and we mainly relied on this lady here, Miss Manners. Her name is Judith Martin, but she's great. If you've never read any of her books, highly recommended. She's extremely entertaining, very clever writer. But her theory is that the importance of etiquette at work has kind of gone out the window sort of over the past few decades as the message of just be yourself has become more and more popular. So, a couple of generations of parents ago sort of started saying this to their children. It was supposed to be a nice message of encouragement and support, but it's really kind of taken it over everything in society. So you're just, encouraged to be yourself at all times, no matter what you're doing. And that's true in society, and then the work world typically follows however society is going. So people have begun dressing, speaking, acting more casually at work, and it doesn't necessarily make for a great situation in all workplaces. So instead, Miss Manners encourages us to not be ourselves at work and instead to develop what's called a professional identity. This is the side of you that, comes to work and you kind of, instead of just being yourself, if somebody says something that you would normally react to one way, you kind of learn to control those knee-jerk reactions and respond in a way that's kind and respectful and keeps everyone feeling, respected and like they're worth your respect. So remember that your actions and your responses to actions of others in the workplace can damage your reputation, can cause conflict in your workplace. So it is important how you react to others. So today we will cover the basics of office etiquette. It's just going to skim the surface on a variety of topics. Remember that there is a lot to etiquette. There are, really learning it takes a lifetime. But there are a couple of rules to keep in mind that will kind of help you out of any situation. If you always keep these in mind, Miss Manners calls these etiquette high crimes. So the first high crime is remember that, most importantly, etiquette should never be used as an excuse to embarrass or humiliate someone. If a person is making a good faith effort to be polite or to behave with good manners, you should treat them with respect, even if they pick up the wrong fork or something like that. So above all, always treat others with respect. The second high crime is to deliberately interpret a kindly meant gesture as an insult, or a courtesy as an insult. So if the person believes they're acting out of respect to you and they do it in a kind manner, then it is a breach of etiquette to take offense, as you're calling their integrity into question. So you can politely or gently correct them if you really feel like it's necessary, but try not to jump to an immediate offense if someone does something. Just believe that they're doing it because they're being courteous. So if you don't know how to respond and you keep those two in mind, you'll be okay. So the presentation's going to move in the form of questions, kind of like a newspaper column that Miss Manners, would write. So our first question of the day addresses the idea that etiquette kind of seems exclusionary. So to me, let's say the first question. To me, etiquette seems like a way to exclude people who don't know the rules of how to behave. So for example, if I don't know the rules of etiquette for a particular situation, but others do, and then I feel bad because of it, doesn't that, by extension, make etiquette rude? Well, really, the answer is that it's quite the opposite. Etiquette, exists to stop people from acting on their impulses, which can spell disaster. You tell off a coworker who made you mad, or you run somebody off the road in traffic. So really, every culture in the world has their own rules for behavior. You think of the very strict code of etiquette held by the Japanese. So it's very important that you make a good faith effort to learn the behavior, the etiquette of that group, and then try to act accordingly. And if you do that, and then somebody else tries to make you feel bad if you made a mistake, then that's on them and it's not on you. So no, etiquette in and of itself is not rude. Okay, turning it over to Valerie.
Okay, as Charlie said, we are going to kind of do a question and answer series throughout this, so we encourage participation. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about small talk and pleasantries, and we're going to cover the following 3 scenarios. And I'm going to ask you a question, and if you wouldn't mind typing your answer in the chat box, that would be greatly appreciated. So here's my first question. What's your name? What do you do when you're not able to attach a name with a face? Say somebody comes up to you in the library and just starts talking to you, and they clearly know who you are, but you just can't remember their name. What do you think we should do? I know it takes a minute here for the answers to come up in the chat box, but we definitely, this is the type of webinar where we want to encourage questions and answers. That's great, Brittany. I'm sorry to ask, but your name has slipped my mind. What is your name? That's perfectly fine to do. Another thing we can do, if you've just met the person before, simply in passing, you don't really know who they are. Honesty is great too, Charlie. You can simply extend your hand and say, "Oh, hi, I'm Valerie," and they may mimic that pleasantry and state their name for you. If you definitely know the person, you just really you've spoken with them several times but just can't remember, you could just speak in general terms without using names. What's been going on since we last spoke? General questions may help trigger that answer and may help you remember their name. Oh no, Paige, you're no you don't you can say I'm sorry if you're comfortable with saying I'm sorry, but you could just say, oh hi, I'm Paige. And if you say hi, I'm Paige, they may just go ahead and mimic that back and say, well, it's Barbara or it's Jennifer. They may just go ahead and mimic that pleasantry. But no, the apology is not necessary. If you're comfortable with it, that's fine, but not mandated. This happens to me all the time. This is when somebody greets you using the wrong version of your name. My last name being Edgeworth really gets manipulated into a lot of versions. I've been called Edwards, Edgewater, Edgewood. Edgeall was a new one I got last week. What should we do if somebody greets you using the wrong name? I know with my last name is just not a very common one in this area, but a lot of us spell our names in unique ways, with different vowels or letters or whatnot. So from an etiquette perspective, how do you think we should cover that wrong name scenario? It's kind of hard. Yes, and Charlie is one of those with a unique spelling on her name. So okay, Brittany says she's never corrected someone who didn't know. It's something you'd like to know. Okay, as everyone's typing their scenarios, please keep typing in. I'm going to move forward for the sake of time. But it's okay if you can simply extend your hand to greet them or whatever. But yes, Paige, you're right. Just politely correct them. You just say your correct name. You're reciprocating their greeting, and you're helping the misinformed person to learn. So I've had people say, oh, our speaker is going to be Valerie Edgewood. And I'm like, yes, I am Valerie, but the last name's actually Edgeworth. And now we'll move on to today's training. So politely correcting is absolutely correct. Okay, one more scenario here, and I have dealt with this a time or two at work, but too close for comfort. Receiving a hug from a coworker makes you feel uncomfortable. This happens, I'm sure, in the public library setting as well. I worked in the archives for 10 years, and people get so excited when they find an ancestor they've been looking for, and they jump up and down and want to hug you. But how can we handle that in an etiquette manner? Yes, Alexa, I'm sure, yes, wrong name, other name, correct it. Yes, absolutely, laugh it off. That's a great thing to say. Well, when it comes to too close for comfort, there's a couple different scenarios that Miss Manners recommends. Take control the next time you see this person, and if you're greeting them again and you can see they're coming in for that hug, simply go ahead and extend your hand in front of you. This is a lot better visually when Charlie and I are in person. And you can reach out for that handshake, but not just a general handshake. Give them that double-clasped handshake. This gives the person a little bit of a warmer greeting, because you can just say, oh, I'm very happy to see you, very pleased to see you, nice to see you today. But you can kind of avoid that hug that gets extremely uncomfortable. So let's cover some of our small talk here. I'm going to turn it back over to Charlie.
All right. Christmas is over, but the ugly sweaters live on. So we're going to talk a little bit about proper dress. So our first question here, I have a fun, laid-back personality, and I like to express that in the clothes that I wear to work. So where is the problem with that? Anybody have any suggestions? I'm sure this is something, I know we have at least a library director in here, but yeah, people's clothing choices can get creative at work. So these days, everybody has their own definition of appropriate dress. So, a standard has to be set for work. So I know this can seem old-fashioned. This is often one of the touchier subjects, the touchier topics in this subject. A lot of people can take it very personally, but remember that there are very good reasons for considering appropriate dress at work. First, when you're dressed for work, it shows people that you're serious about what you do, that you're there to do your best work and be recognized for your work and not your clothes. It also shows that you're confident in what you do. a lot of people don't think this part of it is fair, that they shouldn't necessarily be judged on this, but it is human nature. It's a fact that we are going to be judged based on our appearance by others. And remember, finally, that your self-expression, your personal self-expression, might come at the expense of your customers. It can often be hard for them to tell, who's a customer and who's an employee. So keep that in mind when dressing for work. I know a lot of libraries have a type of uniform, some sort of a polo or like a t-shirt during summer reading, things like that. So just keep that in mind, that your dress can certainly affect your customer's experience at the library. Okay, here's a tricky one. A colleague has worn something I don't like, and I'm afraid it makes us look bad to the public. How can I say something without hurting his feelings? Any suggestions? How can you say something to kind of let him know, I think that's really appropriate, and maybe you're not his supervisor. Hint, hint. Any suggestions? I know this is a tricky one. This is takes a little bit of finesse, maybe. A little bit of people skills, some experience. We got a lot of people typing, so I'll give you guys just a second to think on this one. There's the key. Paige.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, she has an unfair advantage as a policy creator in her library. No, that's a great question and a great suggestion. Okay, good, Barbara. We're going to chat about that one actually on the next slide. Yes, so, well, the answer is don't say anything. It's up to the supervisor to say something. So if you are the director or the direct supervisor, yes, maybe then it is time to say something. But it's up to the supervisor to say something if it's against the library's dress code. So here we go, Paige, with your policy on what to wear at work. I know most people hate dress codes, and when we do this live, we get some eye rolls and some moaning at this point, but workplaces have them for very good reasons. Your clothes, as I said, convey messages about yourself. You're sending messages at first impression. It tells people about things like your educational level, your trustworthiness, economic status, your personality, and it can also indicate probability of success, believe it or not. But remember that your clothes also convey these same messages about your organization. So that maybe even is a more important thing to remember at work. So here's a quick example. Bill Gates from Microsoft, he and Steve Jobs were both known for wearing pretty casual clothes at work. When you own your own, multi-billion-dollar organization, you can do that. That's typical. But when he went to testify before the U.S. House Committee on Science and Technology in 2008, you can see the picture below that. He's a little more dressed up. So he knew that if he dressed casually, it was going to show a lack of respect and credibility to Congress, and it was not going to be in his company's best interests. So think about your clothes as a message that you're sending out about yourself and your library. Alexa, that's a dress code issue, I guess. So, I'm not going to say anything one way or the other about their appropriateness, but a lot of libraries choose to tweak their dress code policy based on local culture, local, what's acceptable in that locale. So some libraries would react very conservatively to visible piercings and tattoos, whereas, maybe in a larger urban area that would be okay. So usually if the director doesn't mind, it's probably being based on some sort of an acceptable cultural standard. So I hope that helps. It can vary. Some people have pretty strong feelings about the legging trend, particularly at work. I can tell you that we are not allowed to wear them in state government. So there you go. Okay, our final question in the proper dress category. Here's sort of what Barbara was referring to. So I prefer to dress, more professionally at work, but others in my office are more casual. So some of them might even make comments to me like, "Whoa, you're dressed up today." So is it rude of me to be the one dressed up, or is it rude of them to be commenting on it? And I think, like I said, Barbara kind of, yep, you got it. That's right. Barbara kind of hinted to this. It is considered inappropriate to comment on another person's clothing unless you're giving them a compliment. You're dressed to do your job. You're there to be a professional. and there's nothing wrong with that. So the next time somebody comments, I have a couple of suggestions. You can kind of be polite and smart aleck. I like to wear nice clothes, or this is my casual look. What are you talking about? Of course, it is always polite and acceptable to just say thank you and move on, let it roll off your back.
Okay, really quickly, I just want to talk about meetings and some of the scenarios that may happen with you personally attending meetings. We're going to talk about two different situations here. And the first one is double booked. You have accidentally double booked yourself for two meetings at the same time. What do you think you should do in that sort of situation? Sometimes it may be that you've got two meetings back to back and one's running over, therefore you're late for the next meeting. It's a hard situation here. If you do have two meetings at the exact same time, and it happens, I mean, we're human, errors occur, you can call or email one of the people who are spearheading one of the meetings to explain. Absolutely prioritize and communicate. And along those same lines, Paige, one of the things that Ms. Manners recommends is rather than leaving the person in a lurch if you're supposed to be in two places at one time, if you can have someone else attend one of those meetings in your place, that would be wonderful. That way both meetings can go ahead and move forward, and you don't have to worry about rescheduling one, if at all possible. Sometimes you might have to reschedule. This is a scenario. We try to cover a lot of different things in this training. It's presented to both public libraries and state government employees. You walk into a meeting room and it's being used by another group. And unfortunately, the space has been double booked. I can be honest here with you. Meeting space here at KDLA is at a premium. And sometimes it's hard to find the space you need for the amount of people that may be attending a meeting. And so it's hard to, you don't want to interrupt one meeting, but yet you may have the space reserved for following that. One of the scenarios I'm used to here is there was a gentleman that used to work here at KDLA, and if he booked a meeting room for an hour, normally he would go an hour and a half to 2 hours. And so I actually just realized, okay, if this gentleman is using that meeting space, I'm going to see if I can find a different room, because more than likely he's not going to be done at his appointed time. However, that's not necessarily the Miss Manners way of thinking. At the moment, you need the meeting space. People are waiting on the meeting to start. You just go ahead and find another meeting room if possible. If you're spearheading the meeting, take time later to figure out how the space got double booked in the first place. You can talk to the other person and see what happened. It may prevent the situation from happening again. Also, if you run into the scenario like I have with a former coworker, just say, hey, if you think your meeting's going to take longer, it might be to your advantage to book the space for longer. That way nobody else is trying to use it, or we can make sure that everybody's getting things done when they need to. Latecomers or no-shows. This is extremely frustrating and complicated. What do you do if you're waiting for a person who is late to the meeting? And let's say that you're in charge of this meeting. What should you do if you're waiting for a person who's late to a meeting? And let's say you've been waiting more than 15 minutes for this person. I like it when I see multiple attendees are typing.
That's right.
As a presenter, that's one of our favorite phrases. We like to see you all engaged. Okay, Brittany, I generally wait and then confront them when they do come in, remind them of the time that was scheduled. Okay, a text. Okay, Bobby, that's a new one. Proceed without them. Check with them first if at all possible. All right, these are all great responses. According to Ms. Manners, if you've been waiting for 15 minutes or longer, first try to place a call to that person. Bobby, I think a text would be a 21st century way of dealing with that as well. If the person is still within minutes of your agreed upon waiting time, say you're scheduled for 1, but it's 1:05, you might want to be patient and wait just a few minutes. If your meeting was scheduled for more than 30 minutes previous, and the person's tardiness is going to make you or some other committee members late for your next meeting or their next appointment or their reference shift, go ahead and reschedule it. The most important thing to avoid is to be late for subsequent commitments by prolonging this meeting and starting late because of someone who kept you waiting. This rolls into my next question here. when you're leading a meeting here, we talk about a coworker arriving late for a meeting that you are leading. And Brittany, I agree. It's good to talk to a person, but if it's going to make the meeting run later to confront them during the meeting, might be best to wait until after the meeting so that we can get said meeting over with and move on with our day. Because that just, we get more frustrated as the longer we wait, or at least I can say that I do for sure. Mm-hmm. So when you're spearheading a meeting, I've been co-chair of a couple teams here at KDLA. If you can start a meeting on time and you're the person leading that meeting, by all means, go ahead and start on time. Unless you're waiting for a manager or a client, begin every single meeting promptly. Individuals who begin meetings later are perceived as condoning the latecomer's actions, meaning like, well, we never start till 10 after anyway, so I can go ahead and finish up this email and I'm just going to be late too. They just start to see that that's part of the normal behavior. When the situation allows you to begin without everyone present, please go ahead and do so. You can go ahead and close the door if you're in a meeting space that has one right before the meeting's to begin. Some managers have even been known to lock the door at the time of a scheduled meeting and not let latecomers in to participate in that meeting. I have never had that happen. That's directly out of one of our resources. Charlie just typed in a great example that she has of a college professor who would lock the door at the start time of class, so you had to knock to get in. These sort of strategies, like Charlie describes with the professor or managers locking the door, will indicate that I will not be late for my next meeting. Lesson learned. Again, go with your instinct on these things. It can be awkward, especially if you have a new employee or you're meeting with a community member and things of that nature. Be flexible, but yet try to maintain the integrity for everyone involved. Do the best you can.
Yeah, I can tell you I was only late for that class once. So next we're going to talk about some behaviors that are considered to be bad to the bone. These are behaviors that you should generally completely avoid in the workplace. So the first sort of difficult question here, I work with a very opinionated person who is not afraid to loudly announce his beliefs on anything, from politics to religion, and he knows I don't agree with him. So I'm always calm and polite when I respond to him, but I want it to stop. So how can I respond to this person without making the situation worse? So, we all know we're in sort of a conflicted climate in all different parts of our culture these days, and I'm sure we've pretty much all run into this situation. So just sort of as a first suggestion, what would you say to this person? They're not afraid to announce what they think, so you shouldn't be afraid to announce what you think, right? Very nice, Brittany.
That's a good one, yeah.
That's very good, yep. Got a couple of suggestions here. The first one, really the best solution in a situation like this is not to argue with the person, because that really can just escalate it. Sometimes people like this, I don't want to call them bullies, but it can be, they're just doing it to kind of push your buttons. So arguing can sometimes make it worse. A suggestion from Miss Manners is to pick a consistent answer that is neutral and use it every time that the person does this to you. We have to agree to disagree, something along those lines. And that would be your only response that you give, always. And you don't have to say anything else. It's a neutral comment, like I said. It's polite. It's reasonable for a work situation. State your ground without being argumentative. And if you consistently answer with something like that, the person is going to get bored with you and move on, because they want that discussion, that argument. They already know what you're going to say, so they're not even going to bother with you anymore, because now you're boring, and that's good. And this sort of brings us to the big three, politics, religion, and sex, that our mothers all told us never to discuss at work. So you should definitely, avoid any discussion of all three of these subjects remotely, even close to any three of them at work. They're all very personal issues. People can easily be offended in these issues. Bringing them up can definitely strain your work relationships without you even realizing it. People can start to resent you for making it uncomfortable all the time. Remember that no matter how close you think your coworkers and you are, they're still your coworkers above everything else. That's always going to be at the top. You don't always really truly know what's going on in their lives outside of the library. So discussing these topics can hurt your chances of promotion, from being placed on important community projects, And they're each dangerous, in their own ways. With politics, it's very important to never assume that you know what those of you think or believe. Those are the people around you think or believe. Even if you thought you knew, or they said something in the past, people change. Always remember never to try to win your coworkers over to your side in politics. Very polarizing. It builds up those walls in between your coworkers and defeats the library's goal of working together for the benefit of the community. When it comes to religion, I'm not saying you have to hide your religion at all, but it's not appropriate really to discuss your beliefs or the beliefs of others at work, whether you believe in organized religion or not. And really, I hope I don't have to say, just especially these days, don't talk about anything about sex at work. Just don't go there. And remember that depending on what your position is, you could be accused of harassment by talking about any of these, or even worse, you could be fired, or as we've seen, there's been lawsuits, so it could really escalate badly. And that is an excellent response, Brittany. I just don't talk about these things at work. Yeah, that's my line. I don't do it, period. All right, the next fun one. I don't curse at work, but my colleague does it freely, even in meetings. What should I do about it? I hope y'all don't have this. And hopefully you aren't the person doing it. That would be even worse. So what should you say to somebody who is free with the expletives at work? This can be a tricky one, because some people don't necessarily always even realize they're doing it. It becomes sort of just a habit, or just, a part of their personality. They might not see anything wrong with it at all. Yeah, really and truly, the supervisor should pick up on that. In a perfect world, yes. What if you aren't the person's supervisor? We assume most people in these webinars aren't directors. There's more library employees than there are directors or supervisors even. So if you aren't the person's supervisor, really most etiquette experts and workplace experts recommend ignoring it if you aren't the supervisor. If you are the supervisor, of course, it should be stopped. But if you're, just one of their coworkers, if you acknowledge it, then you're giving the person attention for their bad behavior. It's basically like when you're training a puppy and you want to use positive reinforcement. You ignore the bad behavior. In this case, it's usually, a lack of self-control or an emotional outburst that leads to something like that. And instead, you want to turn their focus to their positive actions. So, great suggestion. Thank you for your hard work, that kind of thing. And if it doesn't stop, maybe the supervisor's not picking up on it, you may want to say something to their supervisor. This makes me very uncomfortable. I don't feel it's professional. A 2012 national survey by a Career Builder website found that 81% of employers think that when employees use profanity at work, it calls their professionalism into question. So some people don't see anything wrong with it. They think it's fun, casual. But the use of profanity at work is generally considered to be unprofessional. And remember that it also shows a lack of respect for your coworkers. All right. A coworker's life outside of the office is an ongoing topic of discussion, from disagreements with her mother-in-law, graphic details of her illnesses, everything's on the table. So how can I politely react to somebody like this? Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like the last one, and I don't like this one either, Barbara. So, in the interest of time, go ahead and type in your suggestions. I'm going to keep moving, though. How do you react when somebody is what I like to call an oversharer? There might be times when this kind of conversation is acceptable at work. Maybe somebody knows that you've had a similar situation and they need advice. Or you need to talk to your supervisor about what's going on. Those are completely appropriate times to do this. But try to remember, that regularly announcing your private matters in the workplace is considered to be a violation of professional etiquette. So if this becomes something, it's acceptable to say something like, I'm afraid you'll have to excuse me, but I have work to do. Because remember that it is never rude to be busy at work. And we're like, I have a weak stomach. Oh, I can't hear about that. Yeah, no. Yeah, Bobby, you're exactly right. And I know you are a busy lady. It's never rude to be busy. I'm sorry, I have things to do. So, yeah, try to steer away from the conversation. Bring it back to something work-related very quickly if you can. Absolutely. All right. This is becoming more of an issue, I think, in today's culture. I found one of my coworkers on Facebook and I sent her a friend request, but she never responded. When I asked her about it, she said she doesn't like to friend coworkers because it's an invasion of her personal privacy. That's totally rude of her, right? She should have totally accepted my friend request, right? Nope. That's right, Paige. That is wrong. Everybody has a right to decide how they want to spend their free time outside of work, who they want to socialize with. I know a lot of people see social media as a way to keep in touch with people from all parts of their lives, but some people don't. They prefer to keep that strict line, exactly, boundaries between their personal and their private, and that is their prerogative. So in a case like this, definitely suggest just move on and don't bring it up again. Okay, our final bad behavior. A colleague was gossiping about some personal matters related to one of our coworkers. She said a couple of negative things about this person who I happen to like. So what should I have done? She was gossiping about this person that I like. Yes. You hit the nail on the head, Brittany. Gossip, a lot of people think, call it out. Yeah. A lot of people think it's harmless. They think it's kind of fun. It builds camaraderie. You're building a little team. But truthfully, there's no place in the office for gossip. It should be ignored, given no attention. It does contribute to a negative culture, erodes trust between coworkers because you think if they're gossiping about that person, then they're probably gossiping about me. So even if you think it's something that's true, talking about it could come back and haunt you in ways that you didn't originally anticipate. So definitely morale builder or morale killer, not a morale builder, can hurt your team for sure. All of that is true. A couple of suggested responses. You can just kind of look at the person and just say something like you're bored. Or just stand there and look at them, because really it's on them to defend their bad behavior in this case. Sometimes if you're a little braver, you might suggest that they speak directly to that person about what they're gossiping about. Either way, don't repeat it, because it could come back that you were the one spreading it. And we, just a quick note, did this for a public library audience face-to-face, and a director was present who said that she considers gossip to be harassing behavior, and it is punishable very severely in their library. So it could have legal repercussions as well for you.
So real quick, I want to talk about just a little bit about email etiquette. We have a wonderful archived webinar. Is it still? I don't know if it's still available or not. It is? Okay. On an entire webinar on appropriate emailness. And I actually am going to give you a different scenario than the one I have listed here, because I did something yesterday that was kind of an email faux pas. I had been emailing back and forth with one of our directors here at KDLA, and she had asked me for another series of email addresses. And as I was looking those up to confirm that I was sending her the right ones, I had actually put them in the CC line, and everybody got that message. So they got to see the entire conversation between the director and I, as well as this message that I sent to everyone. So given that scenario, that was just a mistake on my part. It wasn't any, there thankfully wasn't anything confidential in it, but I did go ahead and send an email out to everyone again and say, sorry, typo on my part, my apologies. So thankfully there was nothing in it. But what happens if you accidentally forward a confidential message to the wrong person? It's very easy to do. Again, I just did it yesterday. Thankfully, it wasn't anything confidential, and I was able to correct it. But if someone does, you accidentally send or forward or copy someone on an email that is confidential, and they're the wrong person, you need to make contact with that person immediately. Either send up a follow message or give them a quick call and say, my apologies, that confidential email was sent to you by mistake, and request that content be kept confidential. It happens. Don't need to make a big deal about it, but just make sure we cover all of our bases. I want to talk a little bit about the telephone. This has been a new experience for me working in CE. I have a shared office with my two colleagues, and these are some things that I didn't have to think about before. But I'm going to give you a couple scenarios. Caller ID. Our phones here at KDLA, a couple years ago, we got a new phone system, and we had never had caller ID before here. So now we see technically whose number's on the other line. But what do you do if you see your colleague's number on your ID and you greet them informally, only to find out that it's your director on the line, which we've had happen here a couple times, because again, maybe the director's powwowing with another of the staff, and they just decide to call you together. So even though it's a friend's line, it ends up being your director. Just for the sake of time, you can recover quickly with an excuse me. And in the future, just don't avoid that the name appearing on the ID is actually the person that could be the caller. So just when you're at work, always have your professional greeting that you use while you're in the office, regardless of who may be on the line. Yes, and absolutely, Paige. Just always expect to not know who's on the other line. How about out of the office? When you're going to be away from the office for the day and knowing that you're not going to be able to return voicemail messages. I bring this up because this is personally something that I am working on. If I'm just going to be if I'm in the office and I have a meeting for a couple hours, I don't change my greeting on my email or my voicemail. But if I know I'm going to be out of the office for a day-long retreat or an extended period of time for a vacation, you do really need to go ahead and indicate that you are out of the office and exactly when you're going to return. This is beneficial for a lot of reasons. Number one, they're not going to keep continually calling your office. Again, I have a shared office with two other staff, and that would be rude if my phone continued to ring when they could have heard the voicemail once that says, "I'm sorry, I'm out of the office for the day. Here's the number if you need immediate assistance. If not, I'll return your call tomorrow." It's also the same with your email. You need to make sure you keep them up to date. Speakerphone. A coworker regularly answers her phone with speakerphone, and you can always hear in the background, like you can hear us typing on our computers. How do you handle speakerphone? This was not something I was very familiar with. Avoid it. Absolutely, Paige, you are correct. There's a conference room adjoining to our office location, and some people will use that space sometimes to make private calls, but they'll put it on speakerphone. And we can hear everything, whether we chose to or not. Again, when we use speakerphone, we have a tendency to turn up the volume so that we can make sure we can hear it and they can hear us. But the point is everyone else can hear it too. And according to Miss Manners, speakerphone should be avoided when possible. Because a telephone call is a private communication, speakerphone should never be used unless you can secure the conversation. This means that speakerphones are not appropriate for use in a cubicle, which would disturb your coworkers anyway. A private office should be used and the door should be shut. You should also realize that voicemail should never be checked on a speakerphone, especially because you cannot obtain consent from the person who left you the message. Again, that is something that we should just completely avoid at work. Absolutely right. Okay, this scenario was in one of the resources that we'll show you at the end of today's training, but one of the other times we presented this webinar, one of the directors out here in a Kentucky library stated this happened. Your cell phone rings in the middle of a job interview, and this happened to be the interviewee, the person interviewing for the job. Their cell phone rang. So we really should, obviously, avoid bringing our cell phones in probably to a job interview. However, if your cell phone unexpectedly rings, you thought you turned it off, but it turns out that you didn't, it's okay to just say, "I apologize for the interruption," turn your phone off, and put it away. That would be the best thing to do, or just leave it in your bag. The example from real-life library land out there, the individual actually answered the call in the middle of the job interview, and that director stated that obviously the person did not get the job. So I understand that we're all completely attached to our cell phones. Me personally, that's how I keep up with my child, just to make sure that everything is okay. But there are times that I just have to put it away, and a job interview is one of those. Okay, another few comments about cell phones. They should always be turned off, especially before entering a building in which a meeting is going to take place. And absolutely right, Paige. Don't answer it. We actually have signs posted here at KDLA for those of you who have visited here before. Cell reception is crummy in our building, and contingent upon where you're meeting, the phone may not work anyway. So if you can avoid taking the phone in with you, putting it down, that is best policy.
Okay, moving into some office politics situations. So, first question. I'm one of those people who's always networking, so I like to let people know about my successful projects and ideas all the time. But last week, a coworker accused me of bragging What did I do wrong? Can you be bragging? Talking about yourself all the time? Remember that a little self-promotion is good, a little tooting your own horn. Um, this is one of the best ways to ensure that your supervisors know that you've been doing good work to get promotions. It can definitely go awry if you do it too much and to the wrong people. Definitely your manager may start to see you as a braggart, maybe an annoyance. Your coworkers, may not want to help you anymore. Maybe you're taking all the credit, things like that. The best way to promote yourself within the office is to keep it low key. Document the things you've done throughout the year. Maybe in a work journal, keep copies of good emails. And then when it's time for your annual evaluation or you're going for a promotion, then bring that out. And that's the appropriate place to kind of toot your own horn. Exactly, Paige. Yeah, presented at your review. That's the person who really wants to hear it at the right time. Okay. My supervisor asked for my opinion on an email that he sent to the staff regarding a contentious topic. Personally, I thought the email was too harsh and it's going to make the situation worse, but I told him it was fine because I didn't want him to get mad at me. So, was I wrong to do that? Ah, very perfect. Yes, you guys have seen this before. Our friend Ben Franklin here has been quoted as saying, honesty is the best policy, and he was pretty much right. Remember that it is simply better to tell the truth than to be caught in a lie, or even worse, to remember who you told which lie to, and keep up with that. And being ruthlessly honest to the point of hurting people, of course, is definitely wrong. But in this particular case, it's more about providing sort of a nuanced, helpful answer that, helps the boss write a good email without insulting him. So start out by saying what you liked about the message and then state your concerns. So something like, I like how you discussed the seriousness of the issue at the beginning. However, I'm worried that others may take the second paragraph too personally, and I don't want them to get angry at you. Is there another way to reword it to avoid that? So that is a form of constructive feedback, which I am a big believer in, Paige. I don't mind to be, have feedback come at me as long as it's useful. So I think most professionals are that way. All right. I have a hard time accepting compliments about my work. I usually end up saying something like, anyone could have done that. So what should I say in response to a compliment that sounds modest, but doesn't question the judgment of the person that's complimenting me? Yeah, right. Just say thank you. It's always the best response to a compliment. This seems like an easy one, but then I do hear, and I'm sure I do it too, and I don't even realize it. I do hear people doing this all the time. It's not considered modesty when you're kind of debating the merits of the compliment with the person who gave it to you. So when you say something like, anybody could have done that, it basically, turns the compliment into a conversation. And it makes it less likely that you're going to get another compliment from that person later on. And remember that compliments are a good thing in the office. They're a good part of office politics. As long as they're making people feel good about themselves. Even when they're not 100% truthful, as long as they're well-intentioned and you're trying to help the other person feel better, it's a good thing.
Got a few scenarios here for you on cubicle space, and keep those comments and experiences in the chat box, but I'm going to move pretty quickly for the sake of time. So first here we're going to talk a little bit about just your computer screens and screensavers. When your coworker in the office is always reading your computer screen over your shoulder when they come to visit. There's a couple different things here. When you see them approaching your work area, you can save what you're doing and close the document. You can try to divert that person from looking at your workstation. You could stand up, and so that way they have to greet you eye to eye. Or you could just hit that power button and turn the screen off so they can't see what you're doing. Germs. This is one of those that I completely, really struggle with. You want to encourage a person with whom you share an office to go home because they're just sneezing and coughing to the point of making you and everyone else around you sick. This is really tough. Unless you're the company's nurse, the person's mother, or his manager, the literature states to mind your business. It also states here that this is a direct quote from one of our resources here. Instead, increase your vitamin C intake and focus on your work in his ailing condition. This person probably wants to be at work less than you want to have them there. It's possible the person is on a deadline or maybe has used up all their sick leave. If the person's curfews are really bothering you, schedule meetings for yourself out of the office or move to a vacant room if possible. And again, Paige, yes, you as director, that is one of those things that you can do. Embarrassment. What do you do when your boss steps in the office and catches you shopping on Amazon for personal items? What do you do when he leers at the screen? A couple of times we've given this presentation, we've heard some personal examples of this happening. Move on. Your boss may not mention it at the time, but you definitely know that they have seen it. You make sure not to do it again. Just don't do it again. Even when you know your boss is out of the office for the day, don't do it. That's just one of those things that we need to keep separate, work and personal shopping or any other sort of personal things on your computer that you should not be doing at work. We'll leave that there. Let's talk about office space. You need to make a phone call on your cell phone without disturbing the airspace of those around you. This happens to us all. Again, we all have lives outside of work, and there are times that we may need to make a personal call. If you're in a room and you can leave, absolutely, Brittany, go ahead and just step out of the room. If you're in a public location, try to find an area where you can create a 2 arms length distance between you and those others around you. You can turn your back away from the people that are in your presence so they won't have to hear your conversation. Try to create at least 4 feet between you and the others in your midst. And that way, not only are you keeping your call private, but you're also showing them respect by trying to separate yourself from them. How about this? I'm sure none of you have ever experienced a noisy coworker in the next cubicle, right? Again, a lot of us live here either in shared workspaces or what we refer to as cubicle land. You can tell your coworker, you know how these are cubicles with a constant stream of loud talking coming from your side. It's really difficult for me to hear, to concentrate, or to take care of business when somebody calls me. It would help that if you could help us keep it down, keep the noise down a little bit. Also, we had an example brought up with listening to music at work. And our rule of thumb here is it's fine to listen to work on your headphones as long as you can hear your phone ring. I guess there was a scenario a few years back where somebody's music was so loud they were basically sharing it with everyone and couldn't even hear their own phone ring. So again, you have to be courteous to those around you. Hostile takeover. Your office mate has a friend that stops by several times a day to gossip, and you feel it's inappropriate. This is hard, again, and this goes back to some of the things that Charlie talked about, how we think we're all friends at work, but again, there may be some conversations that you may not want to have. And Brittany, great. I love hearing when there's a policy. You can tell your office mate, if you feel comfortable enough, that you need it to be quiet at work. Again, never wrong to be busy at work. And you'll hope that she'll respect that you need quiet. The person may respond, "Oh, I had no idea you felt this way. I'm very sorry. It won't happen again." If they get upset about it, you could talk to a supervisor a few days later if the behavior doesn't change. Always good to talk to a supervisor.
Okay, a little bit of discussion about special occasions. This can cause some. They're supposed to be joyous, but they can cause some problems. I think pretty much all workplaces kind of feel like there's always a special occasion going on, birthdays, baby showers, everything. But the number one rule to remember in all these situations is to respect the person's wishes being honored. So if a person tells you they don't like to celebrate their birthday, they don't want a party for their retirement, it is their decision. So, what about gifts? Do we have to buy a gift for every person's life events? No, you do not. That's right. Gift giving should never be mandated. There are, of course, legal issues involved in forcing your employees to buy, or your coworkers to buy gifts for each other. It should be a personal choice for you to decide how close you are to that person. For birthdays, consider celebrating each month's birthdays at once, or even just say happy birthday and move on from it. Work is not a social event, so it's okay to kind of skip something like that. If it's a milestone, like a wedding or a birth, it is appropriate to take up a collection from the people who want to contribute. Or, maybe just have a supervisor get a card and have everybody sign it, something like that. An acknowledgement of that is nice. Now, a retirement is more of a work achievement. That can definitely be celebrated at work. And typically, management will choose how they want to honor that person, and then others can chip in if they want. And, of course, always appropriate for, the coworkers to take that person out to show them, how much they appreciate their service. Right, we consider ourselves to be a pretty closely knit office, and recently one of our colleagues announced that she was getting married, but she didn't invite any of us to her wedding. Should we still get her a gift? Well, we just talked about this. Remember, you don't have to buy gifts, right? Keeping everything separate. There's many people choose that, and that is their personal choice. There's nothing wrong with that. And, you may not know what the personal financial situation is like around the wedding. So even if you think you're close, there may be good reasons why you weren't invited. So don't take it personally. Remember, the wedding is about the couple and not their coworkers. And of course, as I said, you don't have to give a gift. But consider precedent, if you have in the past. An unfortunate circumstance is leading to the early retirement of a longtime employee. Should we still have a party in his honor? So we mentioned that retirement parties are good for work because you are honoring a work achievement. But if it's a circumstance where it's like, ugh, I don't know if you still should. Remember here that it's his wishes. Leave it up to that person. So in this case, it's always a good thing to be honest and say, we would like to honor your service. Would you be comfortable with that? And if they say no, then go with that. Honor their wishes. They may prefer just to retire and kind of slip out the door. However, even if no party and their honor is given, it's still appropriate to give to some sort of a gift to honor their service.
Okay, real quickly, just a few things when dining, and we'll move ahead. When is it appropriate to begin eating during a meal? Again, you may be at a conference or have a large gathering and want to know when to start eating. Protocol dictates that guests wait for the person hosting the meal to take the first bite. This meal is as old as refrigeration. If the person hosting the meal took the first bite, it meant that the meal was safe to eat. Dietary restrictions. Many of us here on staff, many of my family have dietary restrictions. And there's often times that I may be at an event that I may not be able to eat the food that's being served. Basically, you just try to avoid putting yourself in this situation by taking a more proactive approach. You can let the person or the event know ahead of time of your dietary restrictions, and hopefully they can work with you on that. If not, you eat what you can. I always bring extra food with me wherever I go, and try to make it work to the best you can. You're going out to lunch with a group of your friends from work, and someone just always talks with their mouth full. That's hard because sometimes you may be in a committee meeting lunch, a working lunch, so to speak. That's really hard. You can try to minimize the gross act if possible by asking the person questions in between bites. You're more likely to get a complete answer than a mouthful of food to go with it. Hopefully. Let's talk about romantic involvement real quick. A couple different scenarios here. You discover that someone you're working with now is an individual with whom that you've had a romantic relationship in the past. How do you respond when you're reintroduced to that person? And this actually, we've had a couple people say, oh yeah, I've been there, done that. You just greet the person as you would anyone else. You recognize that they'll only be as comfortable as you make them seem. So just reintroduce yourself and say, oh hey, yeah, absolutely. Just say, welcome, glad you're here. Welcome to the office. The other scenario here is an office romance. You're involved in a romance with a coworker, and your boss, who's not aware of the relationship, asks you both to go to a conference. Knowing that this will provoke much office gossip, which we're not supposed to do, you wonder what's the best way to maintain your professional demeanor in the face of this request. And again, according to the literature, unless you and your coworker are dating seriously, keep your personal affairs to yourself. It's not anyone's business. What you do on your own time doesn't matter to anyone else unless it's affecting your professional productivity. Again, that's no one else's business.
Okay, just a few sources. This will be in the PDF of the slides if you'd like to see where we got all these great suggestions. We have to give a shout out to IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, for partially funding this webinar. We thank them very much for their support. Couldn't do it without them, for sure. Definitely encourage you to follow us on social media if you're not already. We do have a Twitter account where we announce library development goings-on, as well as a CE Facebook page. And here are some of our upcoming webinars. Again, these will all be listed on our PDF of the slides, as well as on our continuing education calendar. Valerie and I would like to thank you very much for attending today very properly. Thank you very much, and we hope you enjoyed your time with us. We definitely enjoyed having all of you with us today. If you have any follow-up questions on any of these categories of things we talked about today, we'll do our best to help you. We're happy to talk to you more. Feel free to email us or call us at one of those numbers. Otherwise, take care out there, stay warm, be safe, and we hope to see you at another webinar.
Thanks, everyone.
I apologize, everyone. I hope nobody has left yet. I forgot to move to the final screen. Thank you for saying that, Barbara. You can download the slides in the downloads pod in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Just to the left of the chat pod, you will see that we now provide the survey link right here at the end of the webinar. So you don't have to wait for the email to come to take the survey. We would greatly appreciate it if you go ahead and take that survey now right here at the end of the webinar. To do that, you just find that survey link pod and you click on the name of the survey. It says Office Etiquette Survey. Then you click the Browse To button right below it. That's going to pop up a new internet window on your computer. You just take it's a real fast survey. We've deleted a bunch of the questions, made it shorter. So we would appreciate it if you go ahead and do that now. Certificates will be sent out in a follow-up email within 1 week, and this recording will be posted on the archived webinars page within a week as well. Thank you for that. I was so ready to be done. I skipped it. A lot of important information there at the end. Thank you all again. Glad you enjoyed it. Thanks, Bobby. And if you're watching the recorded version of this webinar, please go ahead and take the survey as well. That link is still live. Thank you.